1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Royal Blue Podcast Live. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Monday show. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Hello and welcome to the Royal Blue Podcast. It's the Monday show. We are live and I am your host, Ian Croll. Joining me in the Royal Blue studio today to talk all things Everton, we've got the Echo's Everton writers, Joe Thomas and Chris Beesley. Joe, how are things? All good?
Yeah, not too bad. Cheers, Ian. Thanks.
Good. Chris, good weekend. How are things?
It feels like we're on the bit of the dark side of the moon at the moment in terms of, they've got the Alcaraz deal done. Was it earliest deal they've done in the summer for 15 years? And then now we're kind of at that void before things really start picking up. That's how it sort of feels to me at the moment.
Well, we literally just discussing with me before we went live on air that it's deadline day tomorrow, which is a bit of a weird concept, isn't it? How many days is it shut for until it reopens again?
It's 6, so it closed on the 10th, reopens on the 16th, and then it's open then. So I think that means that we will get. So we will get term. What is it? 2 official transfer deadline days this summer. And then 1 kind of pseudo transfer deadline day with the PSR deadline on June the 30th. So, if you think about 10 years ago in Sky Sports News and the yellow ticker and all that, I think...
the transfer window isn't going to slam shut this week, is it? It's just going to be left ajar, maybe, and keep the latch on, something like that.
Yeah. I think you're right. Obviously, Everton... got the signing of Alcaraz over the line, and there was like a big surge of transfer content news, and now it seems a bit of a lull. But hopefully that changes within the next week, and we'll figure out who Everton are going to get in the door and who Everton are going to, I guess, release. The retain sheet has not been submitted, is that right?
Oh, I don't think there's Everton haven't publicly released their retained list. So, normally around this time of the year and in previous years, normally well before this point, clubs have said who officially they are keeping and who they're not at the contract players. So, obviously, we all know that Everton haven't done that just yet. We've got a good idea as to where some of those talks are heading, but there is still a bit of intrigue over some of the others. So, but it's definitely unusual that it's gone quite this long without being resolved.
Absolutely. So see what happens. I guess with the key ones that we're looking at, Dominic Calvert-Lewin and Michael Keane. Obviously, Idrissa Gueye as well. Obviously,
Seamus Coleman as well.
Seamus Coleman, there's a couple, isn't there? Today's agenda were a whole host of topics to discuss, including Jordan Pickford, Jack Grealish, Dominic Calvert-Lewin. We'll ask the question whether Everton need a marquee signing rather than just a number of players who obviously improved the squad. So we'll get into it, all that and more. As always, give the video a thumbs up. Drop us a like, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the YouTube channel. As mentioned, we are live, so get your questions in, get your comments in. A whole host of comments on the stream already. Start off with you, Chris, because speaking to you before you came in and reading one of your pieces over the weekend, England played, Jordan Pickford played over the weekend. England won 1-0 against Andorra, but you were none too pleased with some of the criticism that Jordan Pickford faced from certain sections of the national media, specifically with regards to the player rating that he was awarded by, TalkSport, TalkSport journalist. I don't know if we're gonna name that journalist.
Well, there seems to be a bit of a discrepancy over who actually did this, a double byline on the piece. But like I said, talking about that dark side of the moon, there we go. We've got those early summer internationals from England playing Andorra. The game's actually played in Barcelona because I think there've been some off the field issues last time England were there, and they want to go to a bigger Stadium, so they played at Espanyol's ground. But yeah, it was one of those games really where you'd imagine even you or I or Joe could have played in goal for England. I know, and actually,
the cat over there.
Yeah, well, Jordan was actually overhauling the other Shrewsbury Joe Hart, 75 caps for England there. So it was the 70s.
I have played in goal in 11-a-side before. So
Okay,
What are the
tangent
changes?
here. Do you want to elaborate on this?
I actually got a 1-match ban as well from one of my games.
This sounds more interesting than Jordan Pickford against Andorra. Let's go with this.
So he does my role in a mass brawl. So yeah,
did you start it?
Didn't start it. No, I tried to enter as peacemaker, and
Wow.
I'd say I was tarred with the wrong brush. But you know,
No VAR decisions.
that was it. First, I think it was the first game ever abandoned. I forget what the playing fields are called now, up by the Tesco on Mather Avenue. I think it was the first game ever officially abandoned there. I think it was.
I think we need a piece on this from Joe, don't we?
That's it. So,
Full details.
I didn't get a red card because the match was abandoned, but I did end up with a 1-match suspension. So
How was the goalkeeping going until that point?
I think we were 5-1 up. So,
All right, okay.
That's it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Oh yeah, back in the real world. No, that I said that probably was more interesting, but yeah. So because nothing was happening for Jordan Pickford, like I said, he didn't have a save to make. I mean, all of the other the people did the ratings, the likes of Mike McGrath, the Telegraph. I think he was pretty fair. He give Jordan a 6, and Kieran Gill, another one formerly of this parish, at the Mail. So a 5 from him. So because basically, like I said, didn't have hardly a save to make of note. But somebody over at TalkSport, whoever that might have been, like I said, with their joint byline, whoever actually did that, TalkSport decided to give Jordan Pickford 3 out of 10. So, and the reason being because he didn't have anything to do with his hands. A goalkeeper didn't have anything to do with his hands. He should have been doing more with his feet. Apparently, that's what we were told. And so I said, what was he expected to do? I think his distribution was pretty tidy, to be fair. So, was he expected to do a Jermaine Beckford and maybe dribble for all the players, box to box, try and, meg a few opponents, chip the keeper from distance? I don't know what sort of that statement that is. So it seemed pretty ridiculous, really. And it's for somebody who's, obviously my regular duties here at the Echo is to do the player ratings. And it's a game of opinions, the old cliche, but you're always going to get stick and people sort of calling you out for them. But to give John Pickford 3 out of 10 to that, it's just attention seeking. It's no sort of journalistic credibility in that. And so I did a piece of that. It seems like every other international, I'm having to do some sort of opinion piece defending Jordan Pickford, and it's getting boring really. And Jordan's a big lad, and you can see he's very self-confident. He knows how good he is, so he doesn't need me to be his attack dog or anything like that. But it's insulting, really, for a player of his stature. He's been England's undisputed number 1 for a long time now. Like we said, only Peter Shilton's got more caps for him now. He's moved ahead of both Joe Hart and David Seaman with that appearance against Andorra. And as much as some of the sort of understudies have done well of late, obviously Henderson had the highs and lows in the cup final, and he should have gone in truth before.
Joe's leaving us. He's important.
Obviously, some breaking news there. Yeah, no.
Okay.
I have.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I'll message you and you might
Okay.
breaking news on the pod.
Wow.
Okay, all right. Yeah, so, as much as I said, some of the understudies have done well in parts, and obviously Henderson was the hero for Palace in the cup final. We also saw the two sides of his game there, and should have gone before he saved the penalty. And nobody really who's come in and done a chance amongst his understudies have really come close to reaching his levels. I know I've seen him every game he played for Everton last season. I'm the one who has to look him in the eye with the post-match interview. So I think it's a bit cowardly, really, and just intention seeking. Getting him a 3 out of 10. It's just obviously trying to make a statement in a game, like I said, where nothing happened.
Just to explain what's happened for those who are listening rather than watching, Joe's just received a message of some breaking news, which I think he's going to have to go out and write for an article to be published on the Liverpool Echo website. So whether he joins us back, I don't know. So it's the complete opposite to what happened last week, whereas Joe joined us. Now he's had to get off.
He's got his goalkeeping story in early doors, and but it's good. That's the nature of the game, isn't it? A breaking news story, it seems. So absolutely.
So keep an eye out for that. We'll be intrigued to know what that is. I guess just sticking with Jordan Pickford, then, Chris. Someone made a point to me on Twitter. Well, they're just doing it as a clickbait type of thing where there's nothing really going on. The game was dull, so they need something to hook the article or the content on. But regardless of that, us as local journalists will always step to the defence of all Everton players, regardless. I could tell in your piece that you wrote how irked you were by the situation. I really felt it, reading through the content. I mean, the article, if you want to go and read it for anyone who's there, basically, the headline says, Jordan Pickford deserves better than ridiculous player rating and insulting questions. And just to read a little segment from the article, you say, just what was he expected to do? Perform tricks like a performance seal, nutmeg a few opponents, dribble box to box. What a load of absolute nonsense. And it makes a mockery of doing player ratings. I mean, just for context, I guess you included this in your article, but I think you've been you would admitted in the past when Jordan Pickford's had some bad games and made one or two mistakes, and you've said this is the reason why I've maybe given Jordan a 2 or a 3. But to go and keep a clean sheet, regardless of how much you've had to do to award a 3, whether you're doing it as clickbait or whatever, is quite ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose it said it in that respect, and it'll be vindicated because I've done a piece on it. We're talking about it now, of we taking the bait, as it were. So, but yeah, like I said, from journalistic integrity, it just doesn't stack up at all. Yeah, I've had to give him a 3. I gave him a 3 last season when, you remember back early on in the season, Everton went to Tottenham Hotspur, and they an absolute rick from, I think it was a back pass from, was it Tarkowski? That day, and Son scored, and it was a 4-0 win for Tottenham, so we got a 3 that day, and even, like you say, I gave him a 2 the season before at Chelsea, where he'd done an awful kick straight to Cole Palmer for the hat-trick. So, I've had to go low at times, and on the same token, when he's earned it, which has been many occasions, gave him a perfect 10 against Liverpool for the derby win season before last, and then I think he actually gave him a 9 on 5 separate occasions last season, and that's the true Jordan Pickford. That's what we've seen. That's why he is England #1, because on a regular basis he's producing these top performances, and some of the games in the run-in. Obviously the save at Fulham, he got 9 that day, and then obviously at the final game of the season up at Newcastle United, I thought it was a really mature performance. He was masterful again, and just sort of at a crowd who's for such a long time sort of been trying to taunt him, and in the past had got sort of success with that. Very different now. He was very, very mature and controlled, and was a match for anything that came his way from Isaac. So for a game which is sort of like the flip of that, and he doesn't have anything to do, it's just playing silly games, isn't it? Give him a 3, and maybe you get the popularity with that, maybe get the follows because you get a bit of notoriety. But for somebody like me who has to do a serious, I'd like to think a serious journalistic job, and obviously speaks to Jordan on a regular basis, like I said on my tweet, look in my eye in post-match interviews. I mean, maybe the people who write these sort of pieces, they don't have to do that.
What is it with the national media and Jordan Pickford? Every given opportunity that they get, they seem to, have a go at him for whatever reason. He's always seems to be the target. He always seems to be the scapegoat. And I think, again, referring back to your piece, that he's only made 1 error as an England goalkeeper. Is that right?
Yeah,
that has
led to one, which has led to a goal.
To a goal, and was that the Belgium game?
In the Belgium friendly.
I mean, the amount of caps that he's had, don't get me wrong, it's a debate for whether he could ever go down as one of the greatest England goalkeepers ever. I'm sure there's people who would argue that he is. I'm sure there's people who argue that he isn't. That's not the point. But I think the point now is that there's literally no one out there anywhere close enough to Jordan Pickford in terms of how good he is and how well he's played for England. I guess a lot of people are making reference to the comments that Thomas Tuchel made before the game, wasn't it, where he said he likes his players to be playing in Europe. But he backed that up. He backed Jordan Pickford up with his comments, suggesting that he's still good enough to play for England and stuff like that. But there's literally no one out there for me from an England point of view who could take Jordan Pickford's place.
No, that's the thing. As England #1, you're there to be shot at, and like all goalkeepers, you only have to make one mistake, and then you're getting the stick. It's coming from all quarters. So when you're playing for England, that's probably, as an individual in football, it's one of the sort of most under the microscope positions that there are. So Everton have never had an England number one like this before, so it's a new position for Evertonians, and obviously in the modern age, obviously with social media, it's even more scrutiny coming from so many different directions. But yeah, as much as there are a handful of other English goalkeepers performing in the Premier League, like you say, none of them have come close to reaching his levels. But obviously Tuchel speaks about, as any manager would do, to keep up the competition for places. He says the race is on to be number one, and obviously it's only natural for any new manager to come in and say that. He doesn't want anyone thinking that, oh, they've got a place and they're on easy street and there's no sort of competition. Of course, that's what the manager will say. But if we're going to look at things, all things equally, he's there on merit and has been there on merit for a very long time now. And as a goalkeeper, you could say, in his early 30s, he could still have many good years ahead of him. The biggest sort of compliment, the biggest accolade I could give him now is, I would say, as somebody old enough to remember when Neville Southall was playing for Everton, and arguably at the peak of his powers, as Gav Buckland, who's older than me, would say, Southall, despite him getting Player of the Year in '85 in Everton's best season, was probably at his best around 1990 when the team had declined and he had a bit more to do. So that's my earliest Everton memories, 1919, going to see Southall play there. So for somebody who's grown up watching Neville Southall, for me to say that Jordan Pickford, in my opinion, is now the best Everton goalkeeper since Southall, that's the highest accolade I could pay him.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I think Jordan Pickford should and will still be number one, at least for the next couple of years with England. Hopefully he stays with Everton. I'm keeping an eager eye on any tweets with regards to this breaking news that we could potentially break on the podcast today, but there's nothing doing at this moment.
Might be a case that when Joe comes back in, that's mean because he's done his piece or whatever, and
he can tell us
we're good to go. But, yeah.
If he comes back in, but we'll see. Moving on then, Chris, some transfer news. As mentioned, it's deadline day tomorrow, so maybe things have quietened down a little bit until the new window opens in a matter of days. It's a weird one, isn't it? Yeah. I don't quite understand it, but I know it was maybe a request of some of the Club World Cup teams participating in that competition. But anyway, Jack Grealish been linked with Everton. Interesting one, really, Chris, because he's been. Well, he played for City, he went for a huge amount of money, and he had a fantastic season when City were the treble winners, and then he was obviously struggled to get into Pep Guardiola's team last year. David Moyes has already expressed his admiration for him back when he was at Aston Villa. Basically said he is a really good player and probably the best player in the Premier League at this time. So that was when he was at Aston Villa and before he moved to City. I mean, let's face it, he got his move to Manchester City and he did very well, as mentioned. First off, is he a player that you would look to for Everton to sign? I mean, we know wages are going to be probably an issue, so if it's going to happen, if we're going to talk realistic about it, it's probably going to be a loan deal, isn't it? Yeah,
I'm not too sure if I would. What's been very interesting, because we've sort of been on this for a few days now. Obviously, there was the piece in the Mail yesterday, but before that, it had already been said that these aren't always a scientific measure of matters, but Everton were the bookies' favourites along with Napoli, so quite a different sort of move for Grealish there, if you just go down that avenue. But a lot of good debate for either side, to be fair. But I was encouraged. I'd done a tweet about it after I'd written my initial opinion piece. I had a lot of, for once, I mean, because it's often a problem on social media, people can spout all kinds of things, but there was a lot of good points made for and against. I think it ended up 58%. We did a poll as well. 58% of our readers said no, he wouldn't be a good signing, and 42% said yes, he would be. So it shows quite sort of divided, really down the middle there in terms of numbers. But a lot of people were making good points either way, and some people who were for it were saying he would immediately improve the levels in the squad. He'd be better than anyone that Everton had currently in terms of ability. And it would be a great marquee signing, something we're going to move on to later, in terms of a statement of intent from Friedkin Group and David Moyes. But on the flip side of that, people have said that he's turning 30 in September. His best days behind him now. Obviously, you've mentioned the finances and that. It would be a very expensive move. He's the first English player to move for £100 million. Obviously, he's on massive wages at Manchester City as well. And what was also, I thought, interesting, no matter how good you think Grealish is, in a squad where there's going to be a lot of changes, Everton are actually quite well stocked where his natural position is, and on the left wing there they've got Iliman Ndiaye, the magic man from this past season, and his twinkling toes. Got Dwight McNeil can play there, even Carlos Alcaraz who's come in, he can play there as well. So it's probably the one area on the pitch where Everton actually don't need somebody. So as much as you maybe say on the one hand it's an opportunity there to get a player who's been world class, if we dare use that phrase. I mean, you should be if you're £100 million player, to bring somebody in through the door. But probably in terms of, if only his natural position was actually on the right wing, then you might have an easier sell, because I think for me that's the priority position for Everton, actually on the other flank.
We're going to come back to Grealish, but the breaking news, I guess, that Joe has gone out to write an article on. So Everton have just tweeted and basically said, we are offering contracts to Seamus Coleman and Idrissa Gana Gueye while we continue to liaise with representatives of Michael Keane and Dominic Calvert-Lewin. So I think we expected this, didn't we? I think that was what we're expecting, Seamus Coleman and Idrissa Gueye to sign contracts. We don't know if Coleman's going to be like a coach or a player coach, but interesting that the club is still willing to negotiate with Michael Keane and Dominic Calvert-Lewin. A decision hasn't been made on their futures.
Yeah, I mean it looks, reading between the lines, like it was a 12 noon embargo for that one. Like I said, I didn't have my phone with me. Joe did, and off he went. But yeah, it's kind of as you would imagine. It was just all the noises that have been coming out of Idrissa Gueye in recent days. Social media it'd be a huge turnaround if he didn't sign that. I think that'd be very disappointing given all that he's been saying. Not sure with Seamus Coleman's future in terms of David Moyes said that he needed him. He certainly needs him around there, and but the indication would be that it was a playing contract included in that. I don't imagine that Seamus is going to be any sort of regular next season, but looks like they would include the playing side of things on there. And then the other two, we've been through this a lot. I think for Michael Keane, I think the general consensus, I mean, gets some stick in some parts, but I think most Evertonians feel if Michael Keane was happy to accept a role as fourth choice centre-back, he's an absolute model professional and a great lad to have around the dressing room. I think most people would be happy for that. It's going to be on reduced terms, so it's a case of does he want that? I think the idea with Michael Keane is, does he want to go and play more regular football elsewhere? Is he happy with his role at Everton now, because he's been at Everton for 8 years? He was a first-team regular for the first 5 years of that. Don't forget, when he first came in, he was actually the most expensive defender they'd ever signed in 2017, 25 million move from Burnley. So does he accept that more limited role, which he's actually played quite well at times in recent seasons, coming into the side? You know what you're going to get with him, and he can be depended on to sort of come in from the cold, as it were, or does he go searching more regular minutes elsewhere? And in terms of Dominic Calvert-Lewin, I really don't know. It sort of ebbs and flows, that one. For a long time, I think we were all sort of resigned to the fact he'd be moving on, but I think he's probably seen, because of his lack of minutes and lack of goals in recent times, that perhaps the offers elsewhere aren't quite what he was expecting. So maybe it's a bit of a game where they're both sort of looking at each other here, seeing what they can get before they reach a final position. And don't forget, David Moyes has been pragmatic in the past. I seem to remember, I mean, he ended up actually working out badly for him, but Alessandro Pistoni was released. Sort of thought he was going to find a new club, didn't do, ended up coming back to Everton, and then actually got injured, and therefore I don't think he hardly played again. But
I think that could happen with Calvert-Lewin.
Yeah, he'd actually be let go, and then as a look, and then come.
Just because anyone who could potentially be interested in him would probably have him as second, third choice. If they can't get the first choice, then they would come back to Calvert-Lewin maybe later in the window. How long does he wait for the club to come, and he could come back to Everton? I think that could be a possible option, really. I mean, Keane, you say fourth choice centre back, and you think, oh well, he's not going to play many games, but effectively, he was Everton's third, fourth choice centre back this season, and he still played a fair few games. Yeah. So, with injuries, suspensions, it always happens during the season. You would expect him to get the minutes.
And especially, unfortunately, the current situation, you've got James Tarkowski, who'd not missed a game for the best part of 3 seasons. he could be going into the new season injured. He's had after that, run of over 100 consecutive appearances for Everton, he's had the gone under the knife for the hamstring injury, and Jared Braithwaite's gone into the season having got injured in the final Goodison Park's final Premier League fixture against Southampton. He's also gone into the summer injured, so you've possibly got the situation going into the new season where your two main centre backs aren't fully fit and up and running. So to have somebody like Michael Keane who could step in and do a job, like you said. I mean, obviously everyone mentions the game against Manchester City in April when he came on, as he met himself. We got caught cold. I mean, it's a tough game for anyone to come into. Just as City were revving things up and about to turn the screw. It was a tough day at the office for Michael that day. But you look at the other occasions, you obviously that incredible goal at Ipswich Town on his left peg, nods one in at the back post at Fulham in April as well. He's generally been decent when he comes in, and you can't underplay just what a good pro and good lad he is around. You've got to be more than that. You've got a footballing ability as well. But I think, I said, it's just for me, it's the case, is he happy in that role? And like you say, depending on the circumstances, he might get quite a few games under his belt, or does he want to go and play somewhere where he's going to be in the first 11 every week? Because you imagine whoever he did go to, if that was the case, it'd probably be a bit of a step down for him in terms of stature at the club, you'd imagine.
Well, we've spoke about Calvert-Lewin a little bit earlier than we were expecting in the pod, but I will come back onto him because he's done an interview, hasn't he, with the High Performance podcast, and I'd like to speak about that a little bit. Taking it back to Grealish, Chris.
Yeah.
I've got some comments here which will bring us nicely back into what people are saying about Grealish. I mean, personally, I think if we can get him on loan, obviously we're not going to probably pay the £300,000. He would be a fantastic signing. I think loan deals nowadays, they're not what they used to be. We mentioned this last week in the pod that a lot of loan deals now, you have to pay for the services of a lot of these players. I'm just trying to find some of the comments. So Roy Nixon says, if we sign Jack Grealish, he will be the best footballer at the club. His age isn't ideal, but as long as the numbers add up, he is the type of player needed to take us to the next level. I think that for me, he would probably come in and probably be Everton's best attacking outlet for me. You can debate whether Ndiaye would be up there, but for me, Grealish would definitely come in and improve, and maybe that would enable Moyes to use Ndiaye in the middle on the right. I think there's a big hoo-ha at the minute about we're desperate for a striker, and I'm not saying we're not. We are. We need to bring in probably at least two. Certainly, if Calvert-Lewin is to leave. But the way football is now, your wingers are the ones who score you the goals. You only look at the likes of your Haalands and your Isaacs, and there's obviously a couple more out there that I probably can't think of. Yet they score your goals, but they're they're teams in like Champions League. We're not quite there. Well, we're not there yet, obviously in the Champions League. But it would be good if we could sign a couple of inverted wingers as such. You would be able to score you a bag load of goals. Look at Ndiaye. He didn't, record one assist last season. It was all about goals. So, would you agree with that? Would you think Grealish should come in and be Everton's best player straight away?
Certainly, best player in terms of what he's achieved in the game. You'd say that in talent-wise, he is as an attacking force. He would be, but is it like the deal right for Everton? Because the problem we've had is obviously the fingers burnt in the past with Farhad Moshiri and the PSR. Moshiri would always go after sort of the glamour name. It started with
the marquee signing.
Started with obviously when he appointed Koeman as his first manager, and he used that phrase, the Hollywood of football. Yeah. And he was trying to get somebody who would compete with Guardiola at the time, Mourinho and Klopp in terms of having a high-profile manager. But the thing was about Koeman, ironically, his stellar profile was mostly based on what he did as a player rather than a manager. So he did that. After Rooney came back, didn't he? A year later, people, not just that. I mean, I'm trying to think with all that nonsense with Zaha that never quite happened and interference in that respect. So, okay, I certainly don't think the way he's been since he came in, he's a very sort of hands-off approach. Dan Friedkin's not like that, but whoever's calling the shots, whether it's Moyes or the other representative of the Friedkin group, could be careful in terms of chasing the stars. But I mean, David Moyes, long enough in the tooth, the oldest manager in the Premier League, he knows he's not going to go after a player just because it's a big name. If he goes after Jack Grealish, it's because you think Jack Grealish is still capable of doing a job. He's very intelligent and canny football man. And if he does want Grealish, I'm sure it's because he thinks that he'll be able to do a job. So we know from an attacking point of view, he's got that ability. But is the deal right for Everton? And in terms of how the other attacking players will operate, it's interesting what you say, that the point about the goals coming from out wide rather than up top, because I think it's something we've discussed on the podcast before in terms of Moyes hasn't always had the prolific striker. A lot of his goals have come from, you remember first time round, Tim Cahill from that attacking midfield role, or later on Fellaini sort of pushing up as well. Those sort of players. It was similar at West Ham United with Jared Bowen there. Is sort of those attacking players around the striker who are contributing a lot. And maybe if you've got the case with Everton, they've missed out on Liam Delap already, who's gone to Chelsea. So having missed out on him, maybe it's not the right time to sort of go and get a big name centre forward, because we know half the Premier League are chasing that elusive unicorn, as it was, in terms of the big name striker. And if you've got half the division in there, Everton maybe keep the powder dry for another year, sort of build those players around that, and maybe if they were to achieve something this coming season, decent top half finish or pushing for Europe, whatever, no matter well they can do, maybe they'd be better placed to go after a big name striker or sort of an up and coming striker who could really take them on another level in 12 months' time. Maybe, I mean, let's not forget, Beto finished the season strongly, so maybe. You'd be better keeping him on and maybe spending the funds elsewhere, because we know traditionally, obviously, the strikers are the ones who are going to cost the biggest money anyway. And as much as they finish the season well, they've only finished 13th last season. In terms of, like I said, get maybe those attacking midfielders, of which Grealish would be one, wouldn't it? An attacking midfielder of a high profile, and then maybe look for the striker next summer.
Just to read out a couple of questions and comments on Grealish. So Gas Pipe says, I think Grealish can help us. Even if it's only one season, I'd take him. The Blues, Grealish has never been prolific. He averages around 10 goal involvements a season. Daniel Church, I like Grealish. I think he'd be a good loan, a lot better than the loans last season. Jeff Thompson, Grealish at his best is a very good player, but I don't think signing him would work for us. And Mark Foster says, this comment's a little bit, it's not like naughty or anything like that, but I'm glad Mark said this, because I wanted to bring it up. So Mark Foster says, he would be the best party organiser at the club, with 2 laughing emojis. Is there just this like stigma around Jack Grealish because he's always pictured, well, not always, but he seems to be pictured quite a lot with having a little drink or just enjoying himself? Is the media can spin things completely different to how they're actually really perceived, can't they? Is that something that you think is an issue? Would it put you off from signing? Because in all fairness, for me, it's a no-brainer if he was willing to come to bring Jack Grealish in because of his quality. Is the question marks around his attitude towards football, his lifestyle, that type of thing?
I don't think so. I don't think Pep Guardiola would stand for it, to be honest. Like you said,
but is that why he's willing to push him out? I don't know.
I don't think you could. I don't think anyone can kind of get away with that in the Premier League these days. What I'd be focused on personally, like I said, if it came to the crunch, I'd have serious reservations about this deal. But if I'm going to stick up for Jack Grealish here in terms of as a person, how many times have we seen those lovely little... You can't do more than this, but shows you what he's like as a human being, in those lovely little moments where he's interacted with children and things like that, mascots. I think as a personality, he'd actually possibly be someone good to have around the dressing room. He seems like a really sort of grounded and thoughtful lad in that respect. Like I said, I don't think... anyone in the Premier League could get away with those sort of antics, so maybe it's been blown out of proportion a little bit. So yeah, as a person, I wouldn't have reservations on that side of the deal in terms of being as a personality or the way he leads his life as such. I can just sort of see Joe on the right. There's that door, the transfer window door that didn't quite slam shut.
Oh, he slammed it shut now. Wow, Joe Thomas has returned, which we didn't think he would. But I guess go on, Joe. You can reveal. We've reveled from. We've revealed it, but you can go into detail.
What do you want? Where are we up to?
Why did you leave the podcast? What's the breaking news?
Just contract updates. I mean, to be honest, it's pretty much where we were anyway. Coleman offered a new deal. Idrissa Gueye offered a new deal. I mean, we've reported that as such anyway. Yeah. Moyes made no secret of his desire to keep Coleman on a playing contract. So both of those are updates from the club, but we already knew them. Club says it's still in talks with Dominic Calvert-Lewin and with Michael Keane as well. So again, that's where we thought they were at. I think with Calvert-Lewin, it's probably quite telling that they haven't agreed a deal as yet. I think there's only a couple of weeks left until the contracts run out. So probably, the club are officially saying that talks are ongoing with those two players, but no deals yet being reached. So I think they probably already were looking at other places anyway. But I wouldn't be surprised if they ended up being off, or certainly being exploring their options even more so than they already were. I think it's quite telling that they haven't agreed a deal, and that's where it's left. But officially, they're still in talks with the players, and then. The only other news, again, this was always expected and have written as such, was that Mason Holgate will be released at the end of the summer. Again, 2 years in the Championship, no surprise there. They say Neil Maupay will leave in the summer. Again, previously reported that his loan move to Marseille contained an obligation to make that deal permanent. So no real surprises, to be perfectly honest. But obviously, it's very quiet at the minute if you get a club going on the record with something and might have to just disappear. So it's as you were, really, I think. I'm not sure we know too much more than where we were already.
The club have gone on the record.
The club have gone on the record with it, yeah. So one of the more interesting ones for me, I think, is actually quite a number of the under-21s are going, including, he's no longer under 21, but Billy Crellin. Again, not necessarily unexpected, spent the year out on loan, but it's just another figure that will be removed from that goalkeeping department. Crellin spent a long time around, obviously he was on loan last season, but he has spent a fair bit of time around the first team unit, and they really are going to have to find a second and a third choice goalkeeper this summer now, as opposed to say maybe find a more experienced second goalkeeper and then have someone like Billy Crellin. They might use Harry Tyrer. Harry Tyrer is the one that's left. He's had 2 good seasons on loan, so maybe him. But that goalkeeping department, because Luke Laban has also left as well. It really has shrunk. So
okay, well, just before you came back in, we were talking about Jack Grealish and the links with Everton. I'll move it on a little bit from what Chris was saying. But in terms of a marquee signing, there's a lot being made, as there always is, about signings and whether clubs should go for a marquee signing, take the club to the next level, give the impression that we're in for big players, etc. Doesn't necessarily have to be Grealish. I'm not suggesting that. That was just an example that we used. But do the club need a marquee signing, or would you prefer, a couple of really good signings that David Moyes would build the team? Just before you came in, Chris mentioned that in the past, under the Machedi years, that that was his end goal. That's what he wanted. He wanted a Hollywood manager. He wanted Hollywood signings. I'm not suggesting that marquee signings don't work. They do. But what's your thoughts on take on that?
Yeah, no, I think David Moyes would be more than willing to take one on if he could find the right one at the right price. I think we've already seen that by the pursuit of Liam Delap. Look at the fee for £30 million. It wasn't going to break the bank, given where we expect Everton to be from the 1st of July when their PSR position opens up considerably. We know that the Freakins have got money, and we know that Everton need to spend it. So I think that he'd be more than willing to have a marquee sign. I think he'd be interested in bringing one in. I think very much kind of him entering the summer transfer market. I think one of the things that he was working through in his head, and it probably has been reflected in some of the ongoing negotiations with the contracts, and the fact that some of them aren't resolved, is always trying to work out whether or not this is a squad that needs. Is this a squad that needs 2 £50 million players? Does it need does it need 4 £25 million players, or does it need 10 £10 million players? It's quite a complex question to ask, really, because you can make an argument for all those. On the one hand, you can say there's talent there, but it just needs lots and lots more depth. On the other hand, you could say it just needs a bit more stardust sprinkled in certain areas. On the other hand, you could say, well, they finished 13th effectively 2 seasons in a row. If you had 2 real high quality players, if you can tempt them to Merseyside, then that might be the difference. Then I think the key thing to think about when we're thinking about this is think of Moyes' rhetoric since he came to the club. He spent a long time saying that this is a club that should be aspiring to better results, better positions in the table, and with that, better players as well. And I think he's quite keen to try and almost live that mindset. I think we all know that the safest way to sustainably build this squad, because we've been burned in the past, is by that gradual accumulation of talent and getting young players in that doesn't mean not spending money, but getting players in that can grow with the club. For me, a more sensible signing would be someone like a James McAtee, who's obviously much younger, looks like he's out of favour at Man City. You'd imagine he'd be cheaper as well, but there's clearly a lot of talent there. You get him in, and then he can maybe build himself up with the club and and do things like that, as opposed to someone like a Jack Grealish. But I do think that I think Moyes has entered this summer transfer window quite fluid. I think he's quite fluid in his outlook. He knows that he needs to build the foundation for sustainable progress. But if he can take a shortcut here and there, a safe shortcut, because he's probably going to have the financial backing to do so, and I think he's already earned the trust of the fans. That's happened within weeks, isn't it? There were doubters, as difficult as it is to remember these days. But you look at the form they've put in, the way they finished the season as well. Like he's operating from a position of strength. So I think that if he could get one on terms, I think he would be open to that. But I'm not sure if Grealish would be quite the person, because I think he's going to be very expensive.
What about a loan deal, though?
Well, even a loan deal, they're going to expect to pay a lot of his wages. Yeah. The thing with Manchester City and Jack Grealish is, I think with Man City and with Jack Grealish, it's probably in both player and club's interest that he departs, given where we're at the moment. And it's probably in the player and the club's interest that he departs on a permanent. Man City obviously aren't short of money, but they're not going to get rushed into a loan deal with a club that might only be willing to pay a fraction of his wages. They can wait all summer for that. So I think if the player and the club decide that now is the right time to part ways, I think what's more likely than anything is that they spend the next couple of months trying to make that a permanent one, and then if they're backed into a corner come the middle of August and no one's bitten, well, then all of a sudden they might be open to someone coming in and just taking him off and paying, contributing towards his wages for a year. But until then, they're not under any real pressure to sell, or to at least come down from their asking price. So, it feels like, he'd excite fans. He's a good player if you can get him on the player that he is, and there's no doubt that he would be. Walks into that starting 11. So. It'll be exciting, but I don't think that Moyes is averse to a marquee signing. I'm just not quite sure if Jack Grealish is the one at this stage of the summer.
Just to pick up on Joe's point, and we'll finish off on Grealish now, Chris, but with regards to a loan deal, even now you're going to have to still pay a large portion of his wages. There might even be a fee with the way loan deals work now. There's probably going to be 2-3 clubs who are maybe ahead of Everton in the pecking order to sign Jack Grealish. Even like Newcastle, who were reported to be interested in, they're not going to want to pay £300,000 for Jack Grealish on wages like that. Even Villa, we know they're in a bit of, not PSR trouble as such, but they may need to sell before they need to buy. So a lot of player trading in that. What would be the big sell for Jack Grealish to come to Everton? I mean, like I say, Newcastle got Champions League. It feels to me it's a bit like if all this is true and it's concrete that Everton are interested, Newcastle are interested. We've already been turned down by Liam Delap as well. Mm-hmm. What would be the sell for Jack Grealish to come to Everton?
The sell would be the same sell that you tried with Delap, but it obviously didn't work. I mean, it's interesting, like say about marquee sign. To be fair, Matt Jones, we spoke about this. We did a piece this morning, actually specifically on marquee signings, and he actually said very similar to Joe actually. Matt saying that, if he was going to do a raid on Manchester City, it'd be for McAtee, a younger player who can develop rather than a glamour name, as it were. So if you ever take a look at that one, and I've also picked somebody else out as well. But for Grealish, what my sell would be who my marquee signing would be, and I mentioned this in my marquee signing piece, would be, this is a unique opportunity, or once in a lifetime opportunity. Okay, you're not got European football this season, but it's Everton Football Club moving into this brand new stadium. You could be the poster boy, the main man for this new project. it's never going to happen again. Not for this first season. The Evertonians have been success start for so long now. They're crying out for an idol to worship. Basically, it's been as long as we know. If you get loved at Everton, you're going to be loved there like much as any club really. And there's just waiting for everything to turn up to sort of to ignite again for so long now. No, Goodison Park, first purpose-built football ground in England for most of its existence, the preeminent ground in the country, hasn't been for a generation now. It's no coincidence that Everton have gone 30 years without winning a trophy because Goodison's no longer financially sustainable. So you're moving to that new stadium, and all those excuses are sort of melting away now. It's a really exciting opportunity. So that would be my sell. Maybe it didn't work on Liam Delap, but that if I was going for any sort of player of any stature, you won't be saying it to anyone, but certainly your potential marquee signing, that's what I'd be saying. Say, you can be the main man here.
Okay. I think you're right, Joe, to be fair. Wouldn't expect a quick decision on this, and it could be one of those long-running summer transfer sagas. But we'll see what happens. Hopefully Everton. I mean, I would be more than willing to take Jack Grealish. So we'll see. Just moving on. So come to you on this one, Joe. So just want to address any rumours or speculation with regards to Everton having requested the first, second or third league game away from home. What's the situation with that? Are you able to shed any light on that? Because I know a lot of speculation going around that the stadium might not be ready in time for the first game, but...
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a fair bit of speculation. My understanding at the minute is that Everton haven't requested for their opening games to be away from home. That's basically my understanding. I think I've seen different people say different reasons why. One of them was that the hospitality wasn't ready. Well, I think the club addressed that this weekend by sharing a video of the hospitality section. So as it stands, obviously it's June the 18th that the fixtures come out. So so what's that? A week on Wednesday. So we'll find out who the first official league opponent at the new stadium will be at that point. And as I say, I've been speaking to the club about this, and every indication I've been given so far has been that they haven't requested for games to be away from home. There's probably a pretty high chance that the first game is away from home. That's because the last four have been at home. If you look back, I think it's gone Southampton, Chelsea, Fulham. What was this season? Brighton. So, I mean, there's four in a row, and that's not entirely fluke. That's because partly because of main stand works at Liverpool with some of them. Yeah. So, but obviously, if you got a run there of four in a row, you think sooner or later they're going to have an away game to start the season. So they may well not start the season at the new stadium. But as far as I'm aware, there's been no official requests, and it's a question I have asked.
I'm flirting with danger, to be honest, if the second game is at home, because I'm
away.
More holidays.
More holidays? I'm never off. Ideally, Friday night football, the first game of the season. That'd be great, I think, under the lights. No,
bringing it forward and forward now.
I think that'd be great. You're not for that?
I'm easy either way.
You're not off, no?
I'm sure it's going to be fine. I'll make sure I'm there.
Okay. Chris, we spoke a little bit about Calvert-Lewin, obviously, before, and obviously Joe's mentioned it as well, but whether he stays, whether he goes, whatever. How would you perceive his Everton career to have gone over the 8 years is it now? He's third now, ranking as the Premier League, Everton's all-time Premier League scorer. Yeah,
if he was to end this summer, I think he could be pleased with his accomplishments. But I would say he probably could and should have done a bit better. But if you think about when he was first brought in, as much as we talk about, obviously, those much maligned days of excess under Farhad Moshiri and the various directors of football who struggled at Everton at times, Steve Walsh, he was, to be fair, one of his big gems, snapping him up from Sheffield United, $1.5 million. He wasn't even a first-team regular with Sheffield United at the time. You got to remember, I think Sheffield United were actually League One possibly at the time, so wasn't even getting a game in the third tier of English football at the time, so they obviously saw something in him. Wasn't even an out-and-out striker at the time as well. I mean,
played right wing back.
Right wing back under Ronald Koeman infamously before he got the number 9 jersey. So I think maybe that's shown at times that he's not always been someone who's been a striker since he was a little kid, anything like that. So that people talk about that poacher's instincts. I've just been distracted with a former colleague on the horizon. It's all happening here.
Oh God, Ben Turner's in.
So maybe come in, tell us a few jokes. He's an Evertonian. Calvert-Lewin. I think he gets unfairly gets a stick though in terms of he's put his body on the line in big moments for Everton, and obviously he delivered in the Crystal Palace game and other moments as well. I mean, he put those injuries behind him in the full season under Dyche. To be fair, he played a lot of games then, but then was struggling with the numbers in terms of the goals. I think if you look back though, obviously he had that great season and the COVID one, which was mostly behind closed doors, 2020-21 under Carlo Ancelotti. A lot of those first time finishes where he broke the 20 goal barrier in all comps, but his numbers haven't been really the levels that you would expect for an Everton number 9 first choice striker for recent seasons, whether that's because he's been injured or he just hasn't been getting on the end of chances.
A lot of confusion going around since you've come back in, Joe. So Everton have tweeted that they're still kind of in negotiation with Calvert-Lewin. Paul Joyce from the Times has tweeted, Dominic Calvert-Lewin is set to leave Everton after negotiations on a new deal stalls. So, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's pretty much said, isn't it? Like, as it stands, he's out of contract at the end of the season. The end of the month. And it's probably quite telling that a new one hasn't been agreed, but officially the club are saying that talks are still ongoing. So, I mean, you can probably see which direction they're likely to head in. But on the record, the club have said they're still talking to him.
Fair enough. That clears any confusion up that I had. Finish off on a little topic that me and Dave Powell discussed on last Friday's podcast. Now, we discussed this before the news about Crystal Palace and their participation in the Europa League being at jeopardy broke. So basically, UEFA's multi-club ownership rule and teams participating in the same European competition. In light of the Crystal Palace fiasco, now that's the only way I can describe it. What is your understanding of that situation? Or how would you, let me rephrase it? How would you think that could impact Everton if, and it's obviously a big if we got into Europe, the same competition as Roma next season?
Yeah, I mean, this isn't something that I've looked at in
I'll put you on the spot for hospital pass. Hang on. I did tell him that we were going to discuss this before we came on.
When we started, like, yeah, I mean, obviously it's a messy situation, isn't it? But I mean, we have seen Man United and Lyon compete.
Yeah.
Not Man United and Lyon. Is it Man United and
Nice?
And Nice in the same competition.
City and Girona.
City and Girona, haven't we? So there are ways in which you can do it. I mean, I have a lot of faith that the Freakins would find a way to be able to, you know, first of all, if it did happen, we'd all be very happy, wouldn't we? Like, Everton back in Europe would be fantastic. So, yeah, like, I mean, when you look at it, there's all sorts of grey areas. If you know it's coming, you should be able to deal with it, shouldn't you? I mean, maybe it's not a surprise that Textor's fallen into trouble. I mean, I saw someone saying he was going to try and sell his shares in Palace before the deadline so they could get into Europe. I say, well, he was trying to sell his shares in Palace a year ago when to apparently buy Everton, wasn't he? So, I mean, he's not having much success and all that. So,
well, my understanding is that Palace have missed the deadline for Textor to put his shares into a blind trust, similar to what the Nottingham Forest owner Marinakis has done. I mean,
so there are ways in which you can do it as long as you're.
Well, that's my understanding.
I mean, got a lot of sympathy for Palace. Obviously, it's coming to the FA Cup. It's coming right at the end of the, you know, even going into that game, no one expected them really to win it. So, I mean,
I'd say how could they expect early March, before March, that they were going to win the FA Cup and qualify for the Europa League? Forest, it was different because they were on course for the Champions League. Even, you know, the fact that they did drop off, they're still in Europe. So they don't even need to do that now because Olympiacos are in the Champions League, so that doesn't really impact them. I mean, I don't know, Chris, like, I know we don't really know too much about it. I think Dave Powell mentioned last week that, you know, it's happening more and more, and it's a regular occurrence because of this multi-club ownership model. So there might be a new rule on the horizon. He's just speculating, and he's not saying that is definitely the case. But if Palace, you'd be absolutely devastated when you're from a Palace point of view if you were going to miss out on Europe with regards to that. I don't even know if there's a way of swapping competitions, because I heard that if Palace did drop out, then Forest would be bumped up So could
there
they
was talk of
swap?
that. They could drop down, couldn't they, into the Conference League or
Is that a
something?
consolation prize or I
It's
don't
better
know?
than nothing, isn't it? But it's like I say, when you've got multi-club ownership, these are the pitfalls that you fall under. I mean, like I said, as Joe said, it'd be a nice sort of dilemma to have, to actually be in Europe again, for take that as a starting point. But yeah, it could all be changed by the time if Everton get in next season or the year after, whatever, it could have changed again. But it's interesting. Obviously, Textor isn't even. I think has he got the biggest individual stake at Palace, but he's not he's not the majority shareholder. So it obviously shows you there that even in those scenarios, it's an issue. And yeah, but it's a nice problem to have. But it would seem. It would be a very frustrating, upsetting if you're a Palace fan. You've won the first major trophy in your entire club's history, and then you're telling you, yeah, you can't get in. But I mean, that's what happens when you sign up and you've got these multi-club ownerships. I said these are the things that can happen, and it's happening more and more because we're having increasingly these groups, often Americans, and obviously the Greeks in terms of Forest and Olympiacos, who are doing this.
Well, UEFA don't usually back down from these type of situations. It's from what I understand, it is rules are rules, and that's the end of it. So it will be interesting. I'll be gutted for Palace. I was made up when they won the cup against City, but
There's got to be a way of getting them in somehow. It'd be a joke, wouldn't it? Like,
Well, they found a way of getting Liverpool back into the Champions League that time, didn't they? So they can do it.
it's true.
Yeah,
It's true.
And the flip side of that, that was after a similar scenario had happened in Spain, and Real Madrid got in, and I think it was Zaragoza, correct me if I'm wrong, got bumped.
Sociedad, was it? You might be
Whoever
right.
it was,
No, you're-
it went the other way. So yeah,
gonna
they can make it.
You're going to get yourself in trouble again.
I will.
We'll finish off there then. Any final thoughts, Joe, before we go? Thank you for coming back in. Any final thoughts?
no, that's it. Yeah, all good.
Any pieces on the horizon, Chris? For you?
Yeah, there's another piece about Jack Grealish. Basically, like I said, that those quotes that you mentioned, David Moyes saying about him being the best player in the league in that final year at Villa, and sort of looking about what sort of numbers he was doing then and what he was doing last season, and if Everton could get him back to those sort of levels, then they would possibly have a real player on their hands.
Well, we'll keep an eye out on that, and I'm sure there'll be plenty more content, transfer news, Everton news on the Liverpool Echo website over the next couple of days. That is all for today's show. Please remember to give us a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Drop us some 5-star reviews on Apple and Spotify. Most importantly, enjoy your day, enjoy the rest of your week. I'll be back hopefully with Conor O'Neill on Wednesday, and then we'll be back Friday as usual. I've been Ian Croll, joined by Joe Thomas and Chris Beesley, and this has been the Royal Blue Podcast.